Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Mr. Brenden Nunes of the Kings Pulse podcast and the Kings Herald. What's going on, Brenden?
Not too much, James. Thanks for having me on, man. And the Kings didn't get a win last night, but I still thought it was some pretty entertaining basketball, and they're playing the best team in the East. So I'm doing all right.
All right. Yeah, I thought it was entertaining too. Before we dive into the basketball, let's just go through the rigmarole. If you're watching on YouTube, go down below and hit the thumbs up, and then hit the subscribe button. We're at like 870 subscribers. We're like flying towards 1,000. We need to hit that 1,000 mark, people. Let's get there. So if you're watching the podcast, and I know a lot more of you are watching than are subscribed, then make sure you give us a subscription. Also, today is Thursday, February 17th. If you're not a premium subscriber to the Kings Beat, then you're not going to get the invite to the Off the Record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour part 3, the search for Jerry. Jerry Reynolds is joining us tonight from 5:30 to 7 on the Kings Beat happy hour. It's for premium subscribers. It's basically like a comedy show, and if you're going to miss it, sorry. We don't record it. It's off the record. We talk about things. Sometimes we get a little loose. Sometimes we have a few drinks. It's a rousing good time, and if you're not a paid subscriber, you're going to miss out. So jump on board. I'll take people probably until like 3 o'clock, new subscribers, because it requires me sending out links and stuff like that. Also, our merch shop launched between Tuesday and today. So the Kings Beat merch shop is down in the description down below. It's also a good spot to find like where to find Brenden Nunes. But you can get things like this, which are pretty nice. We also have these cool hats, some cool stuff in the merch shop. And for listeners of the podcast, I have a promo code. The promo code is pretty simple. It's ESPN 1320. That will save you 10% and off your first purchase there. And I think it goes until the end of February. So jump on board with some Kings Beat merch, so you too can be on fire during your podcasting days. All right. Outside of that, if you're a member of the Kings Beat Premium, you get the Discord channel. They're doing some cool things over there, which I don't get to partake in because during game nights I'm super busy. But I know Chris, shout out to Chris, he is doing watch parties, which is fun. So you have the ability to watch the game with other people and sit there and chat and smack talk and have a good time. Outside of that, I think we got everything covered. Make sure you're following Brenden. Brenden is just new to the game, and he could use as many Twitter followers as possible. So jump on board with Brenden at Brenden Nunes NBA, which you can see. I think he copied my NBA. I'm just gonna say it, Brenden. Did
I
you
don't know
copy?
about this. No. I would have had NBC at the end. I don't know, James. Had this one for a little while here. There's a lot of other people that copied your Twitter handle. I did not.
Yeah, there. We did. What do we have? 3 fakes. And just so people know, when you switch your Twitter handle, Twitter takes away your blue check mark. Then you have to go through this whole process of getting your your check mark back. And I just haven't had time with all the things that we're doing here at the Kings Beat. I haven't had time to go in and ask for my blue check mark back, which led to like this really weird. And I think King's Insight like took credit for it. I don't know why you would take credit for it. I mean, I should just block you for that, because it is like literally you're putting my reputation out there on the line. But making fake Twitter handles became a thing, and well, it's always a thing around the trade deadline. And to get them to like remove one is like you have to send in a picture of your ID, which again is stupid that they don't store pictures of your ID since you've already gone through this 3 or 4 times like I have. But yeah, just kind of a weird thing. So Brenden, no fake Brenden Nunes Twitter handles yet?
I'm not that level yet, James. No.
You'll
We're
get
not
there.
there yet. Yeah.
You'll get there, Brenden.
That's when I know I made it.
Yeah, you know you made it win. Okay, let's jump into this, man. The Kings lose to Chicago. Um, they have played some tough teams. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat this and say that they shouldn't have beat the Brooklyn Nets. They should have beat the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets were like limping in. But 2-2 during, let's just call it the Sabonis era of Kings basketball. Like, what are your takeaways from that Chicago game? Is there anything that stood out to you that like that you like circled as, I don't know if I liked what happened here, or maybe something you did like?
I mean, I think I definitely liked the play of De'Aaron Fox. He came out on fire in that first half. He scored 19 points, 5 assists on 8 of 11 shooting. There was an aspect of hitting a little bit of everything. I don't think all the shots were great necessarily, but he's been a really good mid-range shooter this year, which I think helps for a guy that we talk about, understandably so, as a poor shooter. I think when you're able to hit that mid-range, it does allow him. It keeps defenders honest, right? So, and they're setting the screens a little bit lower. I think we've seen since Sabonis has been there, that makes it easier for De'Aaron, where if guys go under, he's just able to pull it because he's already in the mid-range. So I did really like what I saw from De'Aaron, especially in that first half, and then he really slowed down. I think Chicago kind of shifted their defense, and this is also an aspect, I think, of what I didn't like is that the Kings just still don't have enough spacing. I think we talked about it on the last episode too, but it's very apparent. Like, Justin Holiday shot really well this game. He ended 6 of 11 from 3. I want to say that a couple of those were in the third and fourth quarter that didn't go down as well, that he was even hotter than those numbers might indicate earlier in the game. And even when you have that type of shooting night, it still didn't feel like there was enough spacing on this Kings team. So I think there's a lot to be optimistic of. Like, I mean, Domantas Sabonis dropping an efficient 22, 12, and 8 is certainly nothing I'm going to complain about from him either. But I think to optimize this group, you really need more spacing around it.
I agree 100%. I think not having Davion Mitchell in the game, it hurts because if you had a 6 of 11 night from a guy like Justin Holiday, and then on top of that, you would have had, like a 4 of 8 night or something from Davion, then it might have provided a little bit more of the spacing that we're looking for. But I think we clearly know, Brenden, that that's what they have to attack during the offseason. They need more shooters. And I mean, DiVincenzo, if he's going to be a starter, if he's going to be someone who like takes on a bigger role going forward, he has to be better than what we've seen so far as a shooter. He has to be more selective, which again, we saw some bad threes from him. Just some really off balance, way outside. Every once in a while, he walks into one. But I think, if we look at rewind to the trade deadline, um, when the Clippers got Norman Powell for like free, that was one of those moves where it was like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense for the Kings with their current roster makeup. But then it made sense like 5 minutes later when all of a sudden Buddy Hield's not there and Tyrese Halliburton aren't there. The combo of them aren't there. You really do need to find 3-point shooters. I think you need a third/fourth scorer on this team, and they don't have that. Like, you take away one of the Kings' big three at this point, or you limit them, you're going to have a tough night scoring. And so I think the Chicago game was like very, very clear where you have to add to this team, and hopefully that's something that they're going to attack. And I'm sure that it is. I mean, this was step one of the build. When you hear people talk about the Chicago build, how they brought in Vucevic and then they built off of him, do you see that as a path for the Kings where that might be the Sabonis thing might be equal to the Vucevic trade, and like you're going to start seeing hopefully, the Kings try to design their team a little bit like what we've seen in Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like the mold of how they built their team, I think is something that the Kings can definitely look at. Like you pointed out, the Sabonis and Vucevic parallel. I think that that's there. I think that the offseason signings are where it gets difficult, right? Like Chicago had a whole lot of cap space they were working with, and on top of the cap space that they brought Lonzo and Caruso into, they did a sign and trade with DeMar DeRozan, which maybe you do a sign and trade for this is just throw out a random example, some ridiculous number with Miles Bridges, and all of a sudden it's like Richaun Holmes going back or something like this. And it would take a lot. And I don't think that those numbers will probably end up lining up. But point being is like it takes a lot of risk this offseason and a lot of things for the cards to kind of fall right for the Kings. So I think that it's more so rather than adding people through just straight up cap space that you're going to see more of like needing to go take Harrison Barnes and one or two first round picks or Richaun Holmes and one or two first round picks and then making your moves from there. But I do think it's similar in Chicago to Chicago's build from the point of view of like you made this trade, but this was just step one. We still saw that number 8 pick that Chicago gave up ended up being Franz Wagner that went to Orlando. And I think at the end of last year, Chicago fan base probably wasn't feeling great about that trade. But then you add a couple more and it's like, okay, I see what we're working with here. And I think that that's where the parallel is.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the Kings' salary for next year, the Kings are they're as of right now they're at 103.8 million. Salary cap I think went up. It's projected at I want to say 121. With a luxury tax at like 145, 147. So it is jumping substantially. And the Kings they are going to have room. You're going to have to worry about the Dante DiVincenzo situation. But again, it's more of a cap hold coming into free agency where it's a $6.6 million cap hold and it'll eat some of your space. But I think that they are going to have at least some money. They certainly will have like a mid-level exception, which is, pushing $10 million at this point. You can do a 4-year, like $44 million deal or $46 million deal with the MLE at this point. It's going to be difficult to find the big heavy hitter. Like you brought up a guy like Miles Bridges, and I just don't see a way that Charlotte's going to let him go. That to me is like pie in the sky. But even that, I mean, I know he's gotten better all around. Is he a true like knockdown 3-point shooter that you can depend on? And I haven't looked at his numbers, so I'm just saying that are there guys that are better fits that are more 3-and-D type guys that fit that mold as opposed to a guy who is going to do a lot of cutting and a lot of playing off of other people and wants to be a big time scorer. I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of avenues there, but
Yeah, I think the caliber of guy you're talking about, and I know he just is dealing with an injury right now, but it's like a Joe Ingles. This isn't like a big splash sort of free agent market. And again, I know Ingles has his injury complications. It might be a little bit older, but something like a Joe Ingles, Kyle Anderson, and maybe Anderson doesn't shoot great from three, but like I think this is the caliber of player you'd be talking about.
yeah, actually, if I'm the Kings, I'm looking for a higher caliber player. And that's not a slide on either one of those guys. I think that you need the next Harrison Barnes. So Harrison Barnes plus in order for this thing to work. And so I think that that's where they look. Now, like we could get back into like, does that mean like they're going to chase Jeremy Grant again, or someone like that? Maybe. I think that they're looking for a tier above, an equal to or higher tier than Harrison Barnes for the next step, which is, kind of where you saw the Bulls build out their team this last year. Now, we're going to dive into the numbers a little bit because I think there's something interesting. I mean, we take the Chicago game, and look, you're going up against one of the best teams in the league. That Chicago's been absolutely spectacular. And DeMar DeRozan at this point is an offensive juggernaut. Alvin Gentry talked about it in post game that, like, look, no one is slowing this guy down. And he just tied or broke Wilt Chamberlain's record for the most consecutive 35-point games, shooting over 50% from the field, which I think he's at what, 7? Like, he's been incredible. So slowing him down was going to be an issue. Winning on the road on the getaway game, um, going into the All-Star break, was going to be extremely difficult. Winning without Davion Mitchell, who, let's be honest, like, you want to say, like, it doesn't matter who we think Davion is right now, or can be, he would have slowed down Kobe White a little bit, because that's who he is. And Davion has a hand injury, a right hand injury, which we didn't get anything else on. It showed up strangely on Wednesday morning's injury report, and now Davion is out of the Rising Stars game. So people who didn't get that memo this morning, I don't. The NBA dropped something at like 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm not on the West Coast. I'm not quite sure why it came in so early. But Davion is now out of the Rising Stars, which is a bummer for Kings fans who now don't have any representation at All-Star Weekend.
Not true. Tyrese Halliburton will be there.
Tyrese will be there. Tyrese is not a King, Brenden. He's not a King.
No. The fan base can still, they have something to root for.
I think so. No, I think the fan base should, root on a guy like Tyrese. But I think that not having Davion really in that specific game, it does matter, because it wasn't just DeRozan. You slow down. The focus was to try to slow down DeRozan, and Kobe White went off for 31 points, and then you had to shift some of your energy to him, and that allowed DeRozan to really torch the Kings late. But that's going to happen. That's a good team. But I think it brings us to a discussion on the Kings' offense since the Sabonis trade. And we've got one outlier game, right? We've got the miserable Nets game where the Kings shot 34.4% from the field and had 12 assists. But the other 3 games, Brennan, we're looking at 51.6% from the field, 56.6% from the field, 51.2% from the field. And in those games, 32, 27, and 24% from 32, 27, 24 assists. When this thing is working, it's efficient, and it really does work. You just need more shooters. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, they definitely do. And I think that the other aspect of having more shooting around this, and that we haven't seen in this offense, and I think that we will see less, because obviously they're really aiming for a high-paced offense. But sometimes when you get caught in a half-court situation, I wouldn't mind them going to Sabonis post-ups a little bit. I don't think that we've seen it very often, pretty rare, actually. I want to say there were a couple again in this Vucevic matchup. But prior to that, I can't think of all too many we've seen. And again, it's only been 4 games. They are really focused on playing a really high-paced offense. A lot of times, Sabonis is the one coming down with the board and either hitting the outlet or taking it a couple dribbles himself before giving it up. So I understand why they don't go to it all too often, and I also think that the lack of shooting is a factor of that, obviously. But I think sometimes in the half court you could go to that a little bit more often. But yeah, certainly what we've seen recently is really encouraging for also having this obvious hole of a lack of spacing, and you to still be able to put up those assist numbers. I think there's still a lot of passes that are going through people's hands, and opportunities for the ball to be moving even better. And I think just seeing these possessions where it's like, wow, every single player touched the ball right there, and being able to say that a couple times each game is just so different and encouraging. And I think that there's a level of trust that if I give the ball up, there's a good chance that I'm going to get it back, and that I don't think was there before, that helps factor into this. And yeah, I think that it is very encouraging what we've seen on the offensive end, considering it's only been 4 games and there are aspects that still need to be cleaned up, but it's already looked this good.
You know what I liked about the Chicago game, outside of, what did Fox score, 33, 35, 40? I can't remember what he scored.
Yeah, 33.
33, okay. But the 9 assists. And we talked about this a little bit on the last one, and I actually had asked Fox about this. I know that Sabonis is setting Fox up repeatedly throughout games. He is like this, just a dream for De'Aaron Fox. I mean, completely a dream. And what I think we started seeing in the Chicago game was Fox figuring out how to set up Sabonis. And that's huge. If you can unlock them both, and I can remember back to one play specifically where Fox, we had the huge left-handed jam from Sabonis off the Fox pass in the pick and roll, right? And I thought that was exciting. Secondly, I don't think that I fully knew that Sabonis was left-handed. I hadn't gone in and looked at it, and I've watched enough of him where you don't know he's ambidextrous, so you don't really get into it that much. But when he went up for a pure one-handed dunk, he's left-handed, which really plays in with Fox. Now you have two lefties on the same side of the court that can play in a two-man game and sort of leverage each other. But there was also one other play where Fox hit Sabonis on a beautiful play. Sabonis bricked it and then went back up and tapped it in. And that would have been Fox's 10th assist if he didn't brick the lay-in. So what I'm saying is that I think we're going to start seeing. I talked about this right when the trade happened. I think that Sabonis is a player that can unlock De'Aaron Fox since coming back from injury. So it's one extra game. Fox is averaging 28.2 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. His steals are way down, but he's shooting almost 42% from three, shooting over 50% from the field. He really is coming on. And I think we saw it in the Chicago game where he was takeover from the opening tip. I mean, he had 14 points in the first quarter. But I think we're only going to see this build. And that, I think, is the true beauty to adding a player like Sabonis, because now you have this combination that you see that you can put pieces around to improve it. I guess my question there, Brennan, are they forgetting some of the other guys? Because it kind of felt like that. It kind of feels like the trio of Barnes, Sabonis, and Fox are stealing. Like, they're trying to work on their chemistry, and some of the other guys, like Mo Harkless, just doesn't get any shots anymore. And Justin Holiday, for a long stretch during that game, this wasn't even a factor. He wasn't getting any looks at all. And you have other guys that are coming in. And then I feel like sometimes when I'm seeing those guys, they're forcing things because they haven't seen the ball forever. And I mean, Richaun Holmes is like the most glaring of them, but I think it feels that way with a couple of players.
Yeah, I think there's aspects of that. I'm not at the point where I really am too bothered by that, because I think that some of the surrounding pieces do struggle offensively, like Mo Harkless, Justin Holiday. If you are in a situation where they're kicking it to him and he's he's open from the perimeter, he's gonna pull it, and I think that's fine. And I think that's kind of the adjustment that we saw with Chicago in the second half, right? Is that we're gonna make the other guys beat us. And I think my concern is more so that, like, can the other guys even step up and do that? Which I think is still a question. Like,
The answer is no. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, with Chimezie Metu, like, Trey Lyles is getting a little bit of run in this one. Maybe DiVincenzo, and I think that the three that stand out that I'd like to see, like, more in the rhythm and involved would be DiVincenzo, Holmes, like you mentioned, and then Mitchell when he's out there. And I think that getting all of those guys involved in this building chemistry and added in an offense where it's flowing around and all of those guys have opportunity, that I think that when it comes to those players, yes, but some of these other ones, Holiday, like I said, if it kicks to him and he's open, he's going to shoot it. That's great, but I don't think you need to, like, directly involve him. Harkless, same thing. Chimezie Metu falls into the same thing. So I'm not at the point quite yet where I'm concerned about that. Like, I think it's probably more important to work with the chemistry of the other three guys and the big three and building something there. But there is going to come a point where it's like, okay, you have to be able to go to these other guys, or you're just going to see the adjustment that Chicago made at halftime.
Yeah, I remember I asked Russell Westbrook during the Western Conference Finals when it was OKC versus Golden State, and what OKC I think had a 3-1 lead in that and blew it. And after one of the games, I asked Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant if they were shooting too much as a tandem, because they had combined for 59 shots per game, 59 or more in like the previous 4 games. Like every game they're shooting 59 of like the 72 shots their teams are taking. So that leaves like 13, 14, 15 shots for the other players. It's really hard to keep people engaged defensively when they don't get any love on the offensive end. Like that it's not just like a Richaun Holmes issue. That is an issue throughout the league. If you don't keep players engaged on the offensive end, they often they just can't figure out how to keep engaged on the defensive end. And so I think we're going to have to see the team work through some of that. But also, again, we're going to keep harping on this. This is where you have to improve during the offseason. And we're not talking about a young player learning how to do this or something. We're talking about like you got to go get somebody. You got to get somebody who can average 8 3-point attempts a game and shoot 38 to 40%, and just bring in that other guy. And it's kind of funny, Brennan. We haven't even noticed really all that much, but Jeremy Lamb played really well in the first game. He could be some of that down the stretch, but he's just missing. Like he's got an ankle injury that came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden Jeremy Lamb's not playing on a nightly basis. And I think again against a team like Chicago, where I think you had your scoring going, but you could have used one more creator, one more guy who isn't just a 3-point spacer, but can do a lot of different things. I think you could use someone like that because the Kings are used to having that guy, and not having Davion as well.
Or even Terrence Davis.
Or Terrence Davis. Yeah, yeah. That's a great point. Like this team would look much different with Terrence Davis on the roster. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it definitely would. Yeah, they need confident, capable 3-point shooters and guys that are going to help. If the ball gets swung to them, it's not just if I'm open, I'm going to pull it, but all of a sudden I'm in an advantageous situation. I'm going to take a couple dribbles and take advantage of it. And I think we're seeing Davion do that. I think DiVincenzo's growing into doing that. And Terrence Davis and Jeremy Lamb would probably be able to do that as well, but just haven't quite been out there.
Yeah. When you look at the 11 3-point attempts that we saw from Justin Holiday, were you comfortable with those 11? Because he does a lot of off-balance, coming off screens 3-point attempts, which, to be honest, I didn't know. I haven't watched enough Justin Holiday to like hone in on him. If you're watching the Indiana Pacers, he's like the 8th guy you're watching, if that, on most nights. So, but like watching him a couple of games now, he's not a guy who's standing there waiting for a 3 a lot of times. He's not a true floor spacer in that regard. He's more of a, coming tight off a screen and leaping off the screen and going up for 3-point off balance 3-point shots. Is that something that you expected to see from him, or am I just crazy? Because maybe I'm seeing something that you're not.
No, I don't think I expected it to this extent. I think that they're running a lot of like those same actions that they ran with Buddy, with Justin Holiday. So I think it's kind of enabling him to do that even more so. And I think that it's more than what I would like, more often than not. But at the same time, like we talk about this team really needing spacing. And if other opponents are going into games knowing that the Kings are going to be running Holiday off of these pin downs, and you have to keep an eye on him because he is a aspect of this offense where he can catch and shoot very quickly from 3, and you have to worry about him in actions. I think that that's useful. I think like ideally you'd have a better player that is filling that role, but I think that since the team does need spacing, I don't hate the volume that he's getting up, even for the sake of like it makes other defenses have to think about him.
That makes sense. But where are you at? Last episode, we really, really dug into Dante DiVincenzo. We spent a lot of time on him. But now we have the first game where Justin Holiday really has hit shots. And it's funny, like this is why we talk about sample sizes, right? Justin Holiday is now shooting like 37.9% from three as a member of the Sacramento Kings, which is exactly what he was shooting before when he was in Indiana. And I think it's on like 8.3 attempts per game. So he is giving you some of what you need. I don't think like as far as like he's a long guy, but I don't see him as like a lockdown defender. I even made the comparison the first time we saw him to Garrett Temple, and I don't really see that as much. I think he's a savvy player. I think he's a smart player. I think he's a good teammate, but he doesn't fill up a lot of the other categories that I thought that he might. I just, what are your overall impressions? And like, if he's on this team next season as like, I would probably guess like an 8 through 10 player, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, like 8 through 10, I think that I'm definitely comfortable with that. I'm happy to have DiVincenzo.
No,
I
no, I
think
mean
that
Holiday.
Oh, Holiday. Yeah, I do really, I do like Holiday as that sort of range. Yeah, I mean, I think that his deal is reasonable. It's around 6 million, right, for next year. Um, I'm totally fine with that. I think that we're talking about the Kings needing as many 3 and D players as possible, and I think that while Justin Holiday isn't starting caliber in that aspect, I do think that he can fit, like you said, that 8 to 10, and the Kings need as many of those guys as possible. So I'm certainly happy that if Justin Holiday's on the team, but I also don't look at him as somebody like, oh, you have to keep around. I think ideally you can, but if he's needed to be thrown in for salary matching for a bigger deal, like I'm not losing sleep over that.
Yeah, I do. It's That's a good point. The salary matching. I mean, because between him and Holmes, now you're looking at 18 plus million, plus 25%. You know, you can get up to into the 20s as far as a player that you can bring back without getting even additional pieces in. And again, I don't mind him being on the roster, but I also kind of look at him and go, okay, like at the NBA level, he at least can hold down the fort for a little while. He can play. I think if he's playing 16 to 18 minutes a game, then you can be a solid team. But as a starter, as someone who you're running out there nonstop,
He
you
played
know,
37 minutes against Chicago. Holy.
yeah, that's tough. But again, we talked about this a little bit. I think if you're looking at Terrence Davis coming back, are there even going to be that many minutes? Like it's going to be tough because we're looking at again De'Aaron Fox, Dante DiVincenzo, which I believe will be on this roster next season, Davion Mitchell and Terrence Davis. That's kind of your four guards. Justin Holiday would have to play minutes at the three in order for it to work. I mean, he kind of like, and don't take this the wrong way because I actually think the Kings poorly utilized him. He's kind of like Glenn Robinson. Like he's a guy that if he's on your roster, he's a good character guy. He's a good teammate. He does good things. He doesn't play totally outside of himself and make some random crazy decision. But he also is like there are ways to improve that position. I don't think you can have like a lineup where it's him and Mo Harkless because at this point, I don't think that works as a starting group. You need someone who can shoot the three better, or that is more viable as a 3-point shooter, if that makes sense. Because I think Justin Holiday can shoot the three, but we're talking about a guy who averages 10 points a game and isn't going to scare anybody as far as, as a shooter. I mean, he can knock down the three, but again, no one is game planning for Justin Holiday, and they're not game planning on the offensive end for Mo Harkless. So now you're allowing a team, the opposition, to game plan specifically for Sabonis, for Fox, and for Barnes. And if you knock out one of those legs, this team's in trouble. So yeah, they need more, right? We keep
Yeah,
saying this.
they do. I'm curious where you're at with what you saw with DiVincenzo yesterday because there was a stretch at I want to say early fourth or late third where Fox and Sabonis both went to the bench. And I know that Gentry said that they were trying to stagger those guys as much as possible. So we saw a small stretch there where both those guys were on the bench. And I was like, man, this is a big moment where Sacramento can't let this lead. I want to say it was about an 8-point lead from Chicago at that point get out of hand. And Dante DiVincenzo was the one initiating the offense. Like I think is when Sabonis and Fox are out and Mitchell's unavailable, I think DiVincenzo's kind of the obvious option to do that. And he shot really poorly yesterday. He was only 1 of 5 from three. I want to say his one was a catch and shoot. I'm waiting to pull numbers and talk about it too much until we have a larger sample size, but I am very much feeling what we talked about before, catch and shoot versus pull up for DiVincenzo. But he had 5 assists yesterday. And there was that stretch, like I said, where both those main two, Fox and Sabonis, were out, and I was kind of impressed with DiVincenzo initiating the offense.
I'm totally fine with him being the number 2 point guard. Like I've said this a couple of times. Davion Mitchell can get assists, but they're forced. A lot of them are forced. His best attributes are on the defensive end as a catch and shoot, scorer, like stretching the defense and knocking down open shots, and then every once in a while using his like quickness to get inside and get to the rim. I think that's where he really, really can thrive in the league. I don't think he's like, I might be wrong. I don't think he's ever going to be a 15, 16 point per game guy. I think at his height, if he's given the opportunity, will be more like a 14 point per game guy. But even that, I think it's going to be really difficult because if he comes back on this team next year and you still have DiVincenzo, you still have, Fox and Barnes and Sabonis, but you also add in Terrence Davis and you add in another major piece. Now we start getting into the like how many shots are there type deal, and I think that the one good thing about Davion is he does, he does stay within himself for the most part, and he's pretty efficient, and he's an efficient passer. But it's very nuts and bolts his passing, if you know what I mean. There isn't a lot of flash to it, and that's okay. He makes the easy pass, the short pass, the one that makes sense most of the time. But I don't feel that he's a natural like setup man. And what I've seen from DiVincenzo is different. I think he can be a setup man in a way that Halliburton's a setup man, but not nearly as good as Halliburton at it, just because he's a little bit more selfish as a scorer. What we've seen so far, DiVincenzo is. I mean, he takes some ill-advised shots. Like do not do that again. But we talked about it before we came on. He had that pocket pass where I think he cut to the right elbow and fired a pass to Sabonis. But the way he fired it, to me, it looked like a quarterback. And what he did is he saw the open spot that he could throw a pass where no one else could get it. And it was to Sabonis's like backhand. Sabonis caught it, spun around, and laid it right in. I thought it was absolutely brilliant where he put the pass. And he had some nice dump offs. Like he drives, he kicks. He's super aggressive going to the rim, but he's sloppy. And he needs more time doing it. And he's only a fourth year guy. He's 25, but he's only a fourth year guy who missed a better part of a season. And so he does need more time to develop. And but I think if he can really settle in this offseason at becoming a knockdown 3-point shooter, a guy who can average 38 to 40% and can get you, 8 threes a game, 6 threes a game, not makes, but, attempts a game and space the floor for Fox. I think he's a perfect running mate again, because he's going to have moments where he does something crazy, like off the dribble and finds somebody. And I think as of right now, you got a bunch of players on this team that are not used to having passers around them at all. And so they're surprised. They're surprised when someone like DiVincenzo or someone like Sabonis hits them. You got to get over that really quickly. But when the alternative, and this isn't to bag on the other guys, when your alternative was, Buddy Hield, who does some pick and roll passing, but does not create for others hardly at all outside of the pick and roll. You got Harrison Barnes, who is not a natural passer. You have Richaun Holmes, who's not a natural passer. And those are 3 of your top 6 players. And now you're mixing in all these other guys that actually move the ball in a different way. It's hard to adjust, man. It's like you're looking around like, sorry, I should have caught that ball. That's my bad. And then the other thing you're having is some of these guys think, oh, everyone else is passing the ball, I'm going to do it. And it's like, no, 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 no. Stop what you're doing. Stop it. Because then we're getting these silly turnovers with guys that see Sabonis make a bounce pass that no one else in the league outside of like Jokic can do from the center position, and they're trying it and it's going out of bounds, and they're like, "Oh, my bad." It looked better in my head than it did on the court.
Yeah, I think Richaun Holmes falls into this sometimes, trying to be Sabonis out there.
Shemezi, Damian, like they all of them do. So you brought up Holmes. It's hard to watch.
And he only played 10 minutes in that Chicago game, which I understand why. But, I mean, we heard a lot about it post-game, like, that's got to be a really tough transition. And I think even when it comes to getting in a rhythm, but also just mentally.
Yeah, I worry that he's broken a little bit. He has a personal issue off the court, which we talked about in the last pod. His mom tweeted out that one of his cousins had passed away that was close to him. We don't know when that happened. So I'm not just going to sit here and say, like, she even said, we don't like excuses. But the eye injuries, everything leading up to what's happened this season, even like the contract, I don't think he was happy about. We get all the way to where we are now, and I had tweeted out that he's either got to be better or he can't play anymore. And I know someone responded like he played 10 minutes, and then his mom actually liked the tweet from the response. And my answer would be Richaun Holmes didn't deserve those 10 minutes in that game. And I feel bad saying that, but like whatever's going on, like you either got to get through it or you need to sit down for a week and clear your head. And like I think the All-Star break might be coming at the perfect time for him. And this is a player that I've enjoyed covering. I think he is a hustle guy. I think he's a fun player. He just looks so out of sorts, and it's not that he's not trying. And he's so frustrated. You can see it. The one rebound he had that he went up and just ripped it down, you could just see the frustration in him. But Brenden, that's not. This isn't Little League.
No. And I think the question there, and I think we just got a little bit of news, by the way, if you want to take a peek at your phone. Minor news. But I think that the counter there for Richaun would be, does he deserve the minutes because of what he's previously been and what he can be? And I don't know if that's the case, because at the same time, we saw what Damian Jones had been as of late prior to them even adding Domantas Sabonis. So, yeah, I mean, as much as you can say that, like, oh, well, we know what Richaun Holmes can be, and if he can get back to that caliber of player, he's a really good backup center in this league that can fit well and give them a different look when Sabonis goes to the bench. At the same time, Damian Jones has been able to supply a lob threat offensively who rolls to the basket hard and sets good screens, and then on the other end is a rim protector. And while I do think that we've seen improvements from Sacramento defensively, especially when it comes to perimeter containment, I think that they still lack rim protection on this team, and Damian Jones might be the best rim protector that they have. So, yeah, Holmes is in an interesting spot. And at the same time, while I feel for Richaun Holmes, it being a tough situation, and I would think that this All-Star break gives him an opportunity to kind of reset mentally, and I think come to a point of accepting what the rest of this year is going to look like, and hopefully getting to a point of, I'm going to excel in what this role is. And you're just fully buying into that. So hopefully that becomes the case, but also feel for Damian Jones a little bit that, like, man, you've been playing really well, and now you're just out of the rotation again.
It's hard because he's out of the rotation because you have to keep the value of Holmes. There's no question there. You have to keep the value of him whatever you can. Although at some point there could be negative value. And I hope that Richaun Holmes figures it out and all of a sudden becomes a viable player for this team. I think you have to at least, if you're going to try all of these other things, you have to at least try him and Sabonis together for 10 minutes a game. And that's 5 minutes a half. And it might not seem like it makes all that much sense. But I don't care. I at least want to see it. because even if you're moving forward without Richaun Holmes, Damian Jones is not that much different than Richaun Holmes. They're very similar as far as player types. And you got to know, like, is Damian Jones going to be like, I ain't going to be here. You guys can't figure out how to use Richaun Holmes, and Richaun Holmes makes $10 million a year, $11 million a year. What am I going to do to make a difference here? Um, just so everyone knows, while Brenden was talking, and he said that there was some news, we'll just break it here. This will go up after. Well, you probably will know it by now, but the Kings have waived Lou King, which the press release just went out that the Kings waived Lou King, who is a two-way player. I didn't read the press release, but I'm going to guess this. I'm going to put on my my hat and say the Kings want to look at other players down the stretch of the season, and they don't feel that Lou King is going to play with the parent club, and B fits the long term, like what the Kings are doing long term. There could be something else behind the scenes that we don't know about yet, but Lou King is an interesting player. I think there are reasons why he's not in the league already, because he does kind of feel like a 4A player, like in baseball terms. But still, I think the Kings are going to want to look at other players. It's possible, too, that they look at a guy like Jemias Ramsey, who they had to waive last week to make the trade, and they could re-sign Jemias and put him as a two-way player and sign him to a 2-year, two-way deal. So he's there this year and he's all there all of next year. I think there are a lot of different ways we can see this roster spot be used. Or if someone's really playing well at the G League and they think, we need to reward them and bring them up on a two-way, because G League players versus two-way players is a substantial difference financially. Two-way players make like $460K a year. Plus, when they get called up, they get league minimum pay for their games when they're in Sacramento. So they have the opportunity, I think, to make around 800,000 or 900,000. And G League players are making like maybe 100K at this point, but it's not very much as far as like the grand scheme of basketball world. And I think most G League players make a lot less than that. So that what are your quick thoughts on Lou King?
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see him get some opportunity. Like, we're talking about missing shooting on this team. He's a guy that has size of like 6'7", 6'8", and also shoots the three ball really well. It feels. I mean, the reason he went undrafted was, I think, off court concerns, and
Part of it was off court. I think part of it was that he didn't work hard. That hasn't been the case. That hasn't been the case in the pros. But that was the word on him, was that he didn't like have a motor, and that he took time off and he didn't play as hard as he would like. But go ahead.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we don't know what's up behind the scenes with him, but I think that as a player archetype, like he is interesting to me. Like, I would have liked to see him get more run. Again, as somebody that has size, I think he's progressed as like a playmaker a little bit in the G League this season, and also hits threes at a good rate. Like, I am a little surprised that we didn't see him get some opportunity when we're talking about like Chimezie Metu, Trey Lyles, and Metu's a very hard worker himself. Like, we've heard this season, they took so much praised about Metu's work ethic, right? Like, he hit that game winner and was in the gym like 40 minutes after or something like this, right? It seems like Metu's somebody they really, really like, so I understand, but I am surprised that Lou King didn't get some more opportunity with the Sacramento team. We'll have to see who they fill this spot with.
I'm kind of confused by the way that they've handled their roster this season as well. Not just with Lou King. I mean, so basically, Lou's only played 12 games in the G League. He's averaging 12 points, six rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.2 steals. Only shooting 26.9% from three and 41% from the field. But I bring all that up because Lou King also hasn't played at all with the Kings. And like he's played 10 games with the Kings, and in those 10 games, he's averaging 10 minutes a game. All of that is in junk time, and I don't think he's really had an opportunity to get sort of his bearings. And I think that is the same exact thought I would have for Jemias and Robert Woodard and Nemias Queta. Like the fact that the Kings brought all four of those guys on a 6-game road trip or whatever it was, a 5-game road trip where like you're going back east. I think that there's value in that to learning, to getting that reward, getting the per diem, getting all of the things that come with it because players get paid. They get an envelope worth with cash in it for every day that they're gone, right? So like even broadcasters, I think the per diem is something like $165 a day. So if you're gone for 10 days, you get an envelope with like $1,650 in straight up cash money. So your per diem money is for some of these guys is huge. Um, yeah, so I'm looking at it in like why bring all those guys on that trip outside if you're not going to play them at all, and almost none of them got to play on the entire trip until they had some little injury issue or something, but there was no real reason. Those guys need to be in the G League. They need to be playing massive amounts of minutes. I want to see Nemias Queta playing 32 minutes, 35 minutes a night in the G League every single night. He'll average 20 and 10 with 4 assists, and you're trying to develop him as a passer. He'll block 2 or 3 shots a game. That's where I think you should use the G League as your way to get these guys some real run, especially when you have 5 centers on the roster. Like there's no way for Queta to play in those situations. I mean, he played. There's one game this season where he played like 20 something minutes and was completely out of necessity because half of your team was out with COVID. Those are situations where, yeah, bring him up. That's fine. But the other situations where they're just not getting enough playing time. And I felt that about Luke King. I felt that about Jemias. I felt about Robert Woodard. There's even times where if Chimezie Metu was out of the rotation, he probably should have gone down and just got some run. There was one day where he asked to go down and get some practice, and so they sent him down, and then he came back up the next day. I just think it's weird. I think teams, like I could go on forever about how I think teams use a G League totally incorrectly. I think you might have one player, maybe 2 on a roster that are like Queta or like, I would leave it at Queta, like on this particular Kings roster where you need him to go down there and expand his game and get better at everything. And you're trying to get all these minutes and you want to make him a focal point. So when you do have a guy like Sabonis come off the court, you can put Queta on the court and he might be able to continue to pass the ball and do the things that you need, right? Outside of that, I think that the G League should be used to develop specific player types, and that's it. And I know that sounds harsh, but what I don't think you're ever going to find, well, like it's so rare to find an all-star coming out of the G League, but I think more often than not, you need to find 3-and-D wings, develop 3-and-D wings at the G League level. You need to find rebounding, shot blocking bigs and develop them. Young guys with all kinds of spring, guys like Greg Brown or, guys like Kai Jones that have all of this talent. You need to develop that specific talent. And then what you don't need to do is send guys down there thinking that they're going to be the next Pascal Siakam. That's just not, it's so rare to get that. So I believe that teams use the G League the wrong way, but that's just my own personal rant on the G League itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely having these guys, King and Queta, just with the main roster, like you pointed out recently, doesn't make much sense to me. It also makes the G League games very tough watch from the point of okay, how does this affect Sacramento moving forward? Because all these guys that are getting thrown out there right now, what is this doing for? What is this even possibly doing for any part of the roster unless somebody emerges? And what if they emerge on your G League roster? They could get pulled by another team, or it's you're really talking about emerging into the 12th, 10th guy at best on a roster spot. Yeah, it's definitely been a weird situation, and I'm curious to see what they end up doing with this spot that they just opened up for Luke King. I would guess that waiving him is a product of having somebody else in mind, but we'll have to see if that's the case. We'll have to see if that's the case moving forward here.
I would be on the phone if we weren't on the podcast.
Yeah.
I would be figuring out what this is, but we're podcasting. So you've heard me say this before on the pod, but life is what happens when you're making other plans. Yeah, and especially at the NBA level, it's chaos. It's happening all the time. Weird stuff is happening, and like what Luke King should be doing is working really hard not to be the next guy who comes up and averages 14 and whatever. He should be working really hard to be a Justin Holiday, And so at the pro level, teams do stupid things all the time, and I'll continue to say that. What they do is, I call this the Todd Lighty theory. Is it Todd David Lighty? Yeah, my brain is gone. Anyway, Lighty was a 3-and-D player for Ohio State, and I don't think he got drafted, and if he did, it was in the late second round. But if you watched him play in college, he was Bruce Bowen in college, right? He's a great teammate, a guy who plays within himself. He doesn't do anything silly. He can fill a bunch of roles if you need him to, but he also can just be a guy you put on the toughest offensive player on the other side, and you just go, all right, go get him, right? So a guy like that, they're so valuable that instead of drafting him, a guy who already does that role, who already knows who they are and thrives as who they are, teams go out and draft guys like Malachi Richardson or Dante Green. They're guys that you look at and you think, oh, there's potential for them to become really, really good, to be a star level player. They never get there. They never get there. And what you do is you try to take a kid who has been a superstar at every level he's ever been at and ask him to be Lighty. Like, just go draft Lighty. It's fine. It's okay to be that guy. It's okay to know what your role is. And then those some of those players they go to the G League, they go overseas, they work their way back, but most of them don't. And so, I think that there's a huge mistake that teams make where, advanced analytics will show you how good a player is at defending at the college level. You can read those analytics and you can say, okay, well, I don't think he'll be able to do that at the pro level. I get that. Maybe there's limitations as far as athleticism and stuff, but taking players that have no opportunity, who don't want to be that and trying to convert them into that, it just doesn't work. And, like Omri Caspi said, the best thing that ever happened to him was he got traded to Houston. And when he got traded to Houston, Kevin McHale pulled him aside and said, look, if you're going to make it, if you're going to play for us, I need you to shoot the corner three, and I need you to hustle, and I need you to get out on the break and fill the lane. But what I don't need is you taking guys off the dribble. I don't want to see your 18-foot, 15-foot jumper ever again. I don't want to see any of that. This is who you are if you're going to make it in the league. And he said was freeing. Like, now I get it. Now I know who I need to be. And I think, some guys like, I think Lou is probably in that category that he just doesn't know who he is yet. And he's only 22. That's what's tough. But at the same time, man, you got to be able to show that you can fit in and do everything you can do to stay in the league. And clearly the Kings don't believe that Luke King did that.
Yeah. I think Bagley weirdly falls into what you were just describing of, I would hope that him going to Detroit, they're explaining that this is the role that we want you to play. And if he's willing to more fill a role now and go into it expecting that this is what they want from me compared to where he was in Sacramento, if they want me to be a star, they picked me number 2, of going into a different spot where it's okay, this is the defined thing that they want from me here, that could kind of change, hopefully. I mean, it depends how you respond to that mentally, right? that maybe Bagley is kind of an example there too. But yeah, Lou King, it's like interesting. Like in the G League, it's like, okay, well, this year we're going to use you a little bit more as a playmaker and initiator and expand your passing. And it's like, that's great, spotty here and there when it comes to translating to the NBA, but really we need you to be a 3-and-D player. And I don't know how much the defense is there. Yeah, it's interesting. It's certainly not a trajectory changing with the Kings or anything, but it's interesting to see what they're going to do with this spot.
Yeah, I mean, he's the 17th man on the roster. I mean, that at the end of the day, that's what he is. I mean, Neemias Queta, this team has 4 other centers or had throughout the season. I think they still have 4, right? They do. They still have Sabonis, Richaun Holmes, Alex Len, and Damian Jones. They still have 4 centers in
I
front of him.
forgot about Alex Len. Yeah.
He's played more minutes than Lou King. And the Kings don't have that guy. The Kings don't have a wing. So that tells you everything you need to know. And, I mean, you brought up Bagley. It's a really good point, but Bagley is a guy who isn't – he has people in his ear telling him you're going to Detroit and you're going to be a star. You're going to prove all those haters wrong. Just be who you just fit into a role, find your niche in the league. It's – the self-made man in the NBA, guys who work their way into the league, to me, they're the most brilliant thing to watch. Like guys who really, really have to fight that are on 10-day contracts. And next thing, guys like Garrett Temple, like I love covering guys like that because what you get from those guys, they're so used to how difficult it is and how they don't take anything for granted. And I feel like there's so many of these young players that take everything for granted, and they just think they're going to be in the league forever. I mean,
and how weird is Richaun Holmes' case? Because he was this guy, and then he gets a taste of, okay, no, I am a starting caliber center in this league. I deserve this big payday, and I think it's right to think that. And now it's like, okay, I need to slow back down a little bit here and accept this lesser role. He's an interesting case of starting at that lower spot, climbing to the top, now being bumped back down a little bit, and how is he going to respond to that?
yeah, Kent Bazemore. I mean, Bazemore's out there making $19 million a year as a dude who was cut on multiple teams coming into the league. Like, did he make it? Heck yeah, he made it. That guy's got a beautiful, gigantic house. I think it's in Georgia, that he set himself up for generations of Bazemores should be able to thrive off the money that he made off that contract that Atlanta signed him to. It's just crazy, which good for him. Like you worked hard, you earned your spot, but that's what I think as a G League player, that's where you should be focusing is how can I be the best role player possible, and not how do I become Pascal Siakam. How do I go become an all-star? Because I think I have the talent. And it's hard because, again, to make it to the G League means that you made it to college, to a college team, which means that you were the best of the best of the best of the best of the best at every single AAU tournament that you went to your entire life. You're the best at everything. Everyone in high school thought you were amazing. You've been told you're great your whole life. Now I need you to be something totally different. And that's not easy. So I get it. I get why players don't succeed. I feel bad that there isn't a process to teach them that better, or that there isn't an honesty within agents and the people around them to teach them like this is who you have to be. Ben McLemore in Sacramento, what number 7 pick, number 7, number 8. The Kings kept thinking that he was going to be the guy that jumps over Shaquille O'Neal at the All-Star game, and like where he's at now or where he's been the last couple of years where he's just been a 3-point shooter. Look, man, you can stay in the league and you can survive and you can make $3 to $5 million a year for like 8 years, another 8 years, and just keep making contracts, just keep getting contracts, just keep doing the work, just doing the job that you're good at, which is shooting threes. Don't do anything else. Get better defensively. Just do threes. On occasion, you'll get a breakaway dunk where you can show people that you still have those hops. But it's a tough thing. Oh, we totally got sidetracked, Brenden.
By Lou King.
Oh, damn it, Lou King. Damn it, Lou King. You sidetracked us. But I think that we covered most of what we were going to cover, right? I think the one thing, we were looking up the rebounding numbers. What did we come across with the defensive rebounding numbers?
I'm gonna have to pull this up again here, but they're up to about a. I'm pulling it up again as we speak because I don't want to.
71% is their defensive rebound.
Yeah, and I think that since they acquired Domantas Sabonis in these last 4 games that they've played, we've seen it jump to 73%, which would be about third or fourth in the entire NBA. And I think securing those defensive rebounds helps so much with an increase in pace that we've heard talked about often, and you've pointed out that like Sabonis never played in such a high pace offense before, and I think just being able to secure those more often is just going to lead to more and more transition opportunities, and we've definitely noticed an improvement there. I don't feel like there's been any of these 4 games where I'm like, man, they're getting killed on the offensive glass right now. Maybe that first one against Minnesota when Richaun Holmes was put out there, there were a couple moments, but for the most part, I don't feel like for what was a glaring weakness for the Kings, I don't feel like I've had a moment in these 4 games where I'm like, man, they're really getting killed on the boards right now.
Yeah, I think Sabonis just clears like a gigantic path for everyone else to go get rebounds. And he gets a bunch of rebounds himself, but he also, I think the last game, the Chicago game, they got killed on the glass, right? Um, I think that's the one game where, well, that and when you shoot
Yeah,
34%.
36-47, yeah.
Yeah,
And
when
they're
you
actually at 74.7 defensive rebound those last 4 games.
yeah, which I looked, if 74.7 was their number for the season, that would be number 2 in the NBA. I don't know if it's sustainable. Maybe it is. And I can actually see like plenty of ways that they could improve as a rebounding team, especially like guys like DiVincenzo, who fly in and do all kinds of crazy stuff. If you get used to him flying in and just trying to tap balls, like as a guard flying up in the air and doing crazy stuff, which I'm shocked to see him do. I really do think that you could get those numbers up even better. Sabonis is a game changer when it comes to defensive rebounding. And I think when it comes to like someone had made a comment in the previous YouTube thread from Tuesday's show, and I think it was interesting. It was about how we're so focused on the Kings are so focused on who's getting their offensive points and stuff. Like offense and defense in the NBA play into each other so much, man. It is. If you can't get a rebound, then you're looking at another defensive sequence. If you take a bad 3 and it's a long rebound that shoots out and goes, then your defense doesn't have time to set up. Every time that you give up a bucket, now the defense gets to set up on the other end. So you're costing yourself. Bad defense and bad offense go hand in hand. You can be a really fun offensive team. You can be a better, even more fun offensive team if you're a decent defensive team who's getting a couple of steals, who's getting some quality rebounds and bleed outs. Those are things where you're getting the other team in transition and you're getting easy buckets on the other side. So I think good offense and good defense, they've got to go hand in hand, and they just don't. And that's something that this team has struggled with all season long.
Yeah, and it's probably Sabonis' best defensive aspect is just ending the opposing team's possession by securing that rebound. We've seen the Kings be horrible at that these last couple years, and while Sabonis isn't some amazing rim protector himself, he does deter shots, and again, I think his best defensive aspect is just securing boards. So that's definitely useful. I think we've had stretches earlier in the year where Harrison Barnes was a really good rebounder, and then sometimes that kind of fades a little bit as well. But having some of these other guys, I mean, even De'Aaron Fox securing 6 boards, and he's brought down a decent amount these last few games. It's good to see some of these weaknesses that were so glaring before not feel like they're killing you the same way.
We got it. We got barking dogs at Brendan's house. That happens. Like here, I was on the air at 1320 the other day, and all three of them started going off. It happens, Brendan. You're fine. it happy dog. That's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a couple of last things to get to. We fully got sidetracked by the Liu King news, which is, to be honest with you, is totally fine. I think it sparks interesting conversation, and that's what we're looking to do here. Let's see, we have to get to the business of basketball. Brendan, you don't have to limit this to just this season. This is something Sean and I went through early in the season where we talked about the greatest like sporting event that we've been at, the biggest moment that we've seen. Like I was my first season, Tyreek Evans had that crazy half court 3-pointer at the buzzer to beat Memphis after I think it was OJ Mayo had just scored. Um, I think that I would like to hear your moment. It doesn't have to be Kings. What's the best sports moment that you've been at live? And it can be this season. It can be, part of your journey, and it can be something that happened off the court. It can be whatever.
Yeah, my dog is still. Somebody rang the doorbell, so they're freaking out. But I think it's a tough one. My favorite one to watch was for sure the Baron Davis dunk on Karolinko, the We Believe Warriors. That was but I didn't see this in person. But that was my first moment of, holy crap, I love basketball. I think. Favorite in person though, It weirdly might be the last game that I went to at Oracle Arena, and went and watched the Celtics and sat at the highest level possible, and the Celtics absolutely blew the Warriors away. But I think I'm going with that.
Oh, somebody won't go away.
They will not go away.
They will not go away.
It was my last game at Oracle, and Oracle's home stadium for me, so.
All right. So, and I'm gonna take to while Brennan figures out what's happening at his house. I'm gonna add something that I talked about this last time when Sean and I talked about this. My wife and I were at the Coliseum in Oakland when Derek Jeter made the play at home plate, which was probably again Jeremy Johnby should have slid for sure. And the reason I bring that up is because Jeremy Giambi passed away this last week. And I don't think, I don't know if that played a role in his life after baseball. But I certainly know that he struggled with addiction, and I don't want to be incorrect here, but I'm pretty positive I read that he took his own life. And that's just, to me, it's sad because when you're a sports fan and you watch moments, and you watch things that happen to players on the field, as a kid watching the ball roll between Bill Buckner's legs in the 1986 World Series, I think it's Mookie Wilson at the plate, grounder up first base line, and all he had to do was scoop it up and step on the bag, and he doesn't. And, his whole entire career up to that point, he was a really, really solid, good player. And then all of a sudden you're known as that guy. You're the guy who let the ball roll between your legs and cost the Red Sox their first championship since 1908 or whatever. It was something brutal. So I didn't see that live, but those sporting events stand out to you. Over my shoulder is the catch from Dwight Clark. That's what made me love football, watching that. And so, getting to see something live is cool. Getting to be there in person. What's your favorite Kings moment so far?
The Bagley dunk on Mo Wagner in Summer League. That still might be the loudest that I've heard. Golden One Center.
Is that the in the air? I don't know if it's a full 360, but he caught
it. No, that was against San Antonio.
Oh, yeah.
This is Summer League. I think his it might be his first game in summer league, but it was his first summer league. Bagley had just been drafted, and Fox is on the team as well. Justin Jackson, Harry Giles is on the team. Frank Mason's on the summer league team,
The
and yeah,
2017 NBA draft squad. Yeah,
yes, and
yeah.
you can see, especially from the angle that I was at, that when Bagley caught the ball, that there's an angle there, and he takes one dribble and gathers, and then throws it down on him, and goes back and screams, and Harry Giles bumps into him, and the whole stadium just erupted. I still think that's the loudest that I've heard Golden One Center. I wasn't at like the bogey game winner with the Lakers or anything. The Metu game winner, weirdly, this year was pretty fun. But I think that the Bagley poster dunk in Summer League is my favorite Golden One memory for now.
I think the like as far as Golden One like moments so far, because it's still, I mean, first of all, the Kings have been very bad since they moved into the new arena. I think one of the best moments for Golden One, and this is really weird that it's one of the best moments. The Kings at the 2016 All Star Game traded DeMarcus Cousins. At that point, they were, I think, a game and a half out of the 8th seed when they traded him. And the first game, he gets traded during the All-Star break. We're coming up to that moment, right? So this weekend is the All-Star break, and then the Kings will come back. They'll have practice on Tuesday and Wednesday leading up to Thursday's game. And sometimes players don't even get back in time for Tuesday. I think there's some variance on when you have to be back. Anyway, it was that first game where the Kings had traded their star, and you walked in, and the whole building had like a murmur. And he was such a like polarizing figure that a lot of people were excited that he was gone, and then a lot of people were like, "I can't believe we traded DeMarcus Cousins." And I think they played Denver. They were down. They came back, and they had this moment where it felt like everyone in the building realized it's going to be okay. He's gone, and it's going to be okay because they won, and then they were horrible from then on out.
Well,
But
and
that
we
first
almost
game,
had a taste of that this year. Like Tyrese was traded, and that first game, they didn't have Sabonis available, and I think the fan base was very skeptical. But that very first game they played with Sabonis, Golden One Center didn't. I mean, the fan base didn't know Sabonis was playing. We didn't know he was playing till like 70 minutes before tip off. And Golden One Center got loud. They got excited for that. Like there was definitely a buzz in the building that day.
yeah, the building is acoustically like almost perfect. Like I've caught I don't know, I think it's 11 concerts now at the arena. Like it's an incredible place to watch a concert. But it's also for basketball, like it can get noisy in a hurry. I mean, it can really, really get crazy and noisy and go off the rails. And I think the first two and a half seasons, it was mostly a sellout, or it was a sellout almost every game. It was probably I want to say like year 4 where we started to see like the massive dip. I think this is year 6, right? Um, yeah, it's so hard. All these years run in together, people.
Yeah.
And while I'm on that note, because we're just about to finish up here, huge shout out to Angelique Ashby, city council member, who has always been amazing. She's always been, I mean, she was in Small Market Big Heart. I don't know if people remember that, but I sat in her office and interviewed her for Small Market Big Heart, and she's just a spectacular local politician who's made like major impact in the community. But her she was able to get the Arco property is going to be converted into a massive teaching hospital campus. So I think that I read like 1,200 construction jobs, and then 6,000 jobs for the community moving forward, for the Sacramento community, and they're going to convert the Arco property to this massive campus for a medical school/hospital. So big props to Angelique Ashby. Well, while I'm on that, somehow my brain popped there because we're talking about going back to the arena, and I was thinking about Arco and what that will look like. Hoping they bring over the 6-man statue. I might just go over there and like steal it, like cut it off myself, and like
Yeah.
just throw it in the back of like my Suburban and drive it home, and people can come to Lake of the Pines and see it like sitting. I'll build something in my front yard or my backyard where people can see it. Like I'll light it up because I just think it's disrespectful. I've always thought that that's probably the most of all the things the good that I think Vivek has done off the court. That might be the most disrespectful thing on the court the most disrespectful thing for fans, because the 6 this is sitting out there in the weeds at Arco is for the fans. It's a 6-man. So Brenden, are you good to wrap this thing up?
I am. I have a freaking unit inspection, and they tell you sometime between 9 and 5 on today or tomorrow, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
All right, I'll wrap this up then. We won't do final thoughts, but I'm just gonna clear this up. Number one, if you're still listening at 121 minutes in, Sean Cunningham is on hiatus. There's nothing wrong with Sean. There's no rift. There's nothing going on. He's having a scheduling conflict of sorts, and so we'll get Sean back eventually. That is the hope. But in the meantime, Brenden is doing an absolutely wonderful job filling in. And to be honest with you, there's probably going to be a point where maybe we add some stuff where Brenden is here on additional days, even when Sean is back, because I think it's going that well. So that's number one. Sean is A-okay. And Sean will be at the happy hour. So he will be at the happy hour tonight. On Thursday, February 17th, for those who are watching this afterwards, from 5:30 to 7. Jared Reynolds is dropping by. We're going to talk crazy stories. We're going to really dig into like Jerry's past and all kinds of amazing things. It's an incredible fun thing that we do, the happy hour. If you haven't been to one yet, it's nuts, and it's like a premium subscription to the Kings Beat, $75 for the year or $7 a month. Like, you're going to pay a lot more than that to go to the movies right now. And this is like going to a comedy show that normally would cost you a lot. So just for the happy hour alone, the Kings Beat premium subscription is well worth it. Outside of that, jump in down below, give us a thumbs up, give us a subscribe. If you want to jump in and get some cool gear, make sure to, there is a link down below to the Kings Beat merch shop. Brenden, can you say goodbye?
I can. Thanks for having me on, James. The merch is killer, by the way, especially that hoodie you have going on.
That's right. All right, so for Brenden Nunes from the Kings Herald and the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham. We will see you next week. We won't have a lot of games to talk about because there are no games between now and then because of the NBA All-Star game. So take care, have a good weekend, and hopefully some of you I will see on the happy hour later tonight.